I almost died in that car crash, but the real knife in my back came later from the woman I trusted most. My wife. When the doctor told me she had already signed the paperwork for me, I thought it was love. I thought it was her stepping up while I was too broken to handle anything. But when I finally saw what she signed, I realized she wasn't saving me. She was preparing to bury me. It wasn't a surgery consent form like I expected. No, these were documents that gave her access to my accounts, my life savings, my retirement, everything, only if I didn't survive. And she signed it with a steady hand while I was hooked up to machines, barely breathing. Before I go any further, let me just say this. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, the twists in this story will leave you speechless. Now, back to that hospital room. I could barely move, but I wasn't unconscious. I remember staring at those papers, my vision blurry, trying to process what the hell I was looking at. At first, I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Hospitals are full of forms, right? Maybe it was just routine legal stuff. But the more I read, the clearer it became. She wasn't worried about my survival. She was worried about securing her payday if I didn't make it. And my heart was pounding harder than it had during the crash. I was lying there, ribs aching, head pounding, and all I could think about was her face the night before. She'd been calm, too calm. She kissed my forehead, told me everything would be okay, and then vanished into the hall. At the time, I thought it was nerves. But now, I realized she was already planning her life without me. Lying in that bed, I started replaying the last few months in my head. Her late-night phone calls she claimed were work emergencies. The way she started locking her phone when she never used to. How she suddenly became so distant, avoiding eye contact, barely touching me in bed. Back then, I chalked it up to stress, maybe depression. But in that moment, staring at her signature under those life or death papers, everything clicked into place. That it wasn't stress. It wasn't depression. It was betrayal. That I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. My chest hurt too much. The nurse asked me if I was okay, and I just nodded. What was I supposed to say? Hey, can you double-check that my wife isn't trying to cash in on my funeral? So I stayed quiet. I pretended I was too weak to care. But inside, my rage was burning hot. I wasn't going to confront her right then. That would have been too easy for her. No, I decided in that moment that I'd play along, act like the helpless husband she thought I was. Because if she wanted to betray me, if she wanted me gone, then she had no idea what kind of hell was coming her way once I got back on my feet. That night, lying awake in the hospital, I made a silent promise. I would uncover the truth. I would find out just how deep this betrayal went. And when the time came, I wouldn't just survive. I'd make sure she regretted every single step of this plan. The crash nearly killed me. But her signature, that was the thing that brought me back to life. Not because it saved me, but because it gave me a reason to fight. And trust me, I was about to fight in a way she never saw coming. The next morning in the hospital, I forced myself to act calm. My body was wrecked, but my mind was sharper than ever. I couldn't let her see that I knew. I needed time. I needed answers. So when she walked in with that fake smile plastered across her face, I played along. Hey, honey, she said softly, pulling up a chair. She touched my hand, and for a moment, it almost fooled me. Almost. But I couldn't unsee that signature. I couldn't unhear the doctor's words about her signing on my behalf. That touch felt like a lie now, like a performance for an audience of one. Me? She talked about how scared she was, how she didn't leave my side. Funny, because the nurses told me she'd been gone most of the night. When I asked where she was, she claimed she had to make some phone calls. But the way she avoided eye contact, the way her voice cracked, it didn't sound like fear. It sounded like guilt. While she rambled, I pretended to drift off to sleep. My chest rose and fell slowly, eyes shut, but my ears were wide open. That's when I heard her whisper into her phone, just outside the curtain. He's stable. No, it's fine. Just a matter of time. Her tone was cold, nothing like the worried wife act she gave me seconds before. Every hair on my body stood on end. Who the hell was she talking to? And why did she sound so disappointed that I wasn't gone yet? I knew right then. I couldn't rely on anyone in that room except myself. But I wasn't completely helpless. Hospitals have staff. Staff talk. And sometimes they see more than you think. Later that day, when she left to grab coffee, I asked the nurse a simple question. Can I get a copy of everything I signed? For my records. She hesitated, but after I explained that I just wanted to understand what was going on with my treatment, she agreed. 10 minutes later, I had an envelope in my lap. Inside wasn't just the surgery papers. No, there were documents authorizing financial access, insurance details, and even a clause about power of attorney. She had basically set herself up to make every decision about my body, my money, my future. And all of it was signed while I was unconscious. Unable to protest, I remember gripping those papers so tightly my knuckles turned white. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't her panicking. This was preparation. Careful, calculated preparation. That night, I barely slept. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the past few months. The random withdrawals from our joint account I couldn't explain. The sudden expensive purchases she brushed off as gifts from friends. The way she started dressing up for work events, but never invited me. It all connected now that I started imagining the conversations she might have had with this mystery person on the phone. Did they laugh about me lying there, helpless? Did they already plan how to split my assets once I was gone? The thought made my stomach twist, but it also lit a fire in me. By morning, my fear was gone, replaced by something stronger. Determination. If she thought I was too weak to notice, she was wrong. If she thought I wouldn't fight back, she had no idea who she married. I smiled at her the next day, as if I believed every word of her sweet little lies. But in my head, the plan was already forming. I would gather proof. I would find out exactly who was on the other end of that phone call. And when I had enough, I wouldn't just expose her. I'd make sure she regretted ever underestimating me. The crash nearly ended my life, but her betrayal gave me a new mission. And trust me, I wasn't going to fail. A few days later, I was stronger. My ribs still ached, my head still throbbed, but I could finally sit up without feeling like I was about to pass out. That gave me just enough strength to start digging deeper. If my wife wanted me to believe she was my savior, then I was going to let her keep thinking that. While I uncovered everything she was hiding, she brought flowers that morning, bright sunflowers in a cheap vase. To anyone else, it probably looked sweet. To me, it looked staged, like she wanted to buy a little forgiveness, distract me with a splash of color while she worked behind my back. I thanked her, even smiled, but inside I was making mental notes. Every fake gesture was another piece of evidence. That afternoon, when she stepped out for a quick errand, I used the hospital phone. I called an old friend. Let's call him Mark. Mark and I went way back, and more importantly, he was a lawyer who owed me a favor. I kept my voice low, my words careful. Mark, I think my wife is planning something. Something big. I need you to quietly check into a few things for me. He didn't ask questions, at least not right away. He just said, send me what you can, I'll dig. That was exactly what I needed. Someone outside the hospital, someone I could trust. When my wife came back, I acted weak again. She spoon-fed me some soup, wiped my mouth like I was a child, all the while putting on her performance. I let her. The more she thought I was helpless, the less careful she would be. That night, while pretending to sleep, I caught another detail. She was scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly, and whispering a text. The glow lit up her face. She looked alive, more than she had in months. Not worried, not exhausted, just happy. But that happiness wasn't for me. It was for whoever was on the other end of that screen. I clenched my fists under the blanket. Whoever that person was, they were part of this. Maybe the reason she wanted me gone. And if I had to guess, it wasn't just about money anymore. There was something deeper. Someone else was in the picture. The next morning, Mark called. His voice was serious, almost nervous. Listen, I pulled some records. Your wife's been in contact with a law office, twice in the last month. She requested consultations about asset division and a will. My stomach dropped. A will. She had been preparing for my death before the accident even happened. This wasn't panic paperwork after a crash. This was groundwork, laid out weeks in advance. That I thanked him and told him to keep digging. Then I hung up and looked at her sitting by my bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. For the first time, I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt hunted, but fear wasn't going to control me anymore. If she wanted to play this game, I'd play it better. Quietly, patiently. I'd gather every piece of evidence until I had enough to pull the ground out from under her. She thought she was winning. She thought she could smile, feed me soup, hold my hand, and I'd stay blind. But the truth was, every day I got stronger, And every day she dug her own grave a little deeper that I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was planning my counterattack. And when the time came, she wouldn't see it coming. By the end of that week, I was walking short distances down the hospital hall with the help of a cane. My body ached, but every step reminded me that I wasn't as powerless as she thought. The nurses called it progress. I called it preparation. The stronger I got, the closer I came to tearing her perfect little plan apart. That evening, she walked in wearing perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. It wasn't subtle either. It hit me the second she entered the room. My gut twisted. She wasn't wearing it for me. Not when I was lying there in a hospital gown. No, that perfume was for someone else. Maybe the same person lighting up her phone late at night that I forced a smile. "You look nice today," I said. She blushed, but not the way a wife blushes when her husband compliments her. It was the kind of reaction you give when you've already heard those words from someone else, someone you're actually trying to impress. That tiny detail told me everything I needed to know. There was another man. And she wasn't even careful about hiding it anymore. The next day, while she was out, Mark visited me in person. He slid into the chair by my bed, keeping his voice low. "I've been tracking her calls. There's a number that pops up almost daily. It belongs to a guy named Eric. I think he's the one she's been seeing." I felt my stomach knot, but I kept my face calm. "You're sure?" Mark nodded. "Positive. And get this, Eric doesn't just know her. He works at the same company she claims to have work emergencies for. They've been spotted together leaving late-night meetings." I nearly laughed at the irony. She couldn't even be bothered to cover her tracks. She was risking everything, thinking I was too weak to notice. That I leaned closer. "Keep digging. I want proof. Messages, pictures, whatever you can find. But don't let her know you're involved." Mark gave me a look, one part concern, one part loyalty. "You're playing a dangerous game." I smirked. "She started it. I'm just finishing it." That night, when she returned, I asked her casually about her day. She gave me a rehearsed story about errands, about helping her mother. Her eyes darted to the side with every sentence. I nodded, pretended to believe her, even thanked her for taking care of everything. But the real show came later. Around midnight, when she thought I was asleep, I cracked my eyelids just enough to watch. She sat by the window, phone in hand, giggling softly into the screen. Her face lit up in a way it never did around me anymore. I didn't need to hear the words to know exactly who was on the other end. I felt my blood boil, but I didn't move. I stayed still, memorizing every expression, every laugh. Because soon, very soon, I'd make sure she remembered this moment too. Only from the other side of humiliation. For now, I let her have her secrets. I let her think she was clever. Because the truth was, every secret she thought she was keeping was already slipping into my hands. And once I had it all, I wouldn't just leave her. I'd make her choke on the lies she fed me, one by one. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, I had two things, a cane in one hand and rage burning in the other. My wife wheeled me out like a proud caretaker, smiling for the nurses as if she had been the perfect, devoted partner through it all. I smiled too, but for a very different reason. She had no idea how close I was to tearing her whole world apart. The first night back home felt strange. My house didn't feel like mine anymore. It smelled different. Her perfume lingered stronger than usual, and there were little details out of place. A glass with lipstick stains on the rim, even though she swore she'd been alone the night before. A shirt draped over the couch that didn't belong to me. Small things, but they screamed at me louder than any confession could. The next morning, Mark called again. His voice was steady, but the information he gave me made my blood run hot. I got into her email. She's been exchanging messages with Eric. They're not just casual, they're explicit. And they've been making plans. Plans that assume you wouldn't be around. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. "Send me everything." An hour later, I had screenshots in my inbox. Messages about weekends away, about money. Even about how soon everything will be easier. Some of them were time-stamped while I was lying unconscious in that hospital bed. That was the first moment I allowed myself to truly hate her. Not just disappointment, not just heartbreak. Hatred, but I didn't show it. When she walked into the bedroom that evening, asking if I needed help getting into bed, I let her fuss over me like nothing was wrong. She tucked me in, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I'm so glad you're okay." I almost laughed. Okay. I was far from okay. I was holding a stack of evidence in my hands. evidence that could destroy her life in an instant. But I kept my poker face, because dropping it now would be too easy. That night, I lay awake, scrolling through the proof Mark had gathered. Bank statements showing money transfers to an unknown account. Hotel reservations under her name. Even receipts for gifts she never gave me. Piece by piece, her entire double life unfolded in front of me. I felt the urge to confront her right then, to throw the papers in her face and watch her break. But I forced myself to wait. Patience wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She needed to believe she was untouchable. She needed to keep making mistakes. And when the time came, my revenge would be that much sweeter. So instead, I acted grateful. I thanked her for saving me, for taking care of everything. I watched her beam with pride, watched her soak up the praise. And I knew she was digging her own grave with every fake smile. The betrayal cut deeper every day, but it also sharpened me. I wasn't the broken man she thought I was. I was stronger now, mentally, if not physically. And soon, she was going to learn the difference between a victim and a man with nothing left to lose. The hardest part about being back home wasn't the pain in my ribs or the headaches that came without warning. It was pretending. Pretending to be weak, pretending to be blind to what was happening right in front of me. Every time she brought me a meal or fluffed my pillow, I wanted to scream at her, show her the evidence I had stacked up. But I held it in. Because this wasn't just about catching her. It was about making her pay point one night. While she thought I was asleep, I heard her pacing the hallway on the phone again. Her voice was sharper than before. No, he's not ready yet. Don't push. Just wait. He'll sign when the time comes. My pulse spiked. She was talking about me, about documents, maybe even more financial tricks. She thought she could control me like a puppet. The next morning, I made my first move. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned, maybe I should update my will. Just in case, you know. After the accident, I realized how unprepared I was. Her fork froze midair. For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw a raw greed flicker in her eyes. Then she smiled, too quickly, and said, "That's a smart idea, honey. I can call someone to help with that." Perfect. She had taken the bait. Later that day, I called Mark and told him everything. I'm going to let her think she's winning. When she pushes me to sign, I'll be ready. But we need to move my assets first. I don't want her touching a cent. Mark agreed. Within days, we had transferred my money into a trust under my brother's name, safe and untouchable. On paper, it looked like I still had it all. In reality, if she tried to cash out, she'd come up empty. Meanwhile, I played the role of the dependent husband. I let her drive me to appointments, let her hover over me, let her feel like she was in control. But behind every smile, I was watching, documenting. Setting the stage point one evening, I caught her slipping into the living room after midnight, phone pressed to her ear. I followed quietly, my steps soft on the carpet. From the shadows, I heard her laugh, the same laugh I used to love, now poisoned. "Don't worry, baby. It won't be long now. He's fragile, weaker every day." I stepped back before she noticed me. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm. Because now I had exactly what I needed. Confirmation that she wasn't just greedy. She was waiting for me to disappear. The next morning, she acted sweet again, making pancakes, kissing my cheek, asking if I needed more pillows. I smiled, thanked her, and tucked the memory of her late night call deep in my mind. She thought she was the actress, but I was the director, and soon, I'd make sure the final act of her little play would end with her downfall. A week later, she finally made her move. I was sitting at the kitchen table, Kane leaning against the chair, when she placed a folder in front of me. Her smile was practiced, but I could see the tension behind her eyes. "Don't worry, honey," she said sweetly. "These are just some updates. Standard stuff, you know, to make sure we're prepared. After what happened, it's the responsible thing to do." I flipped the folder open, pretending to struggle with the pages. My hands shook slightly, not from weakness but from rage I forced myself to hide. Inside were exactly what I expected: legal documents about power of attorney, access to my accounts, and yes, the will. She leaned closer, her perfume suffocating. "All you have to do is sign. I already filled out the details for you." For a second, I let my eyes meet hers. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only hunger. I forced a cough, then said weakly, "Maybe tomorrow. I'm tired." Her smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Of course. Rest, sweetheart. We'll handle it tomorrow. As soon as she left the room, I grabbed my phone and called Mark. It's happening, I whispered. She's pushing the documents now. Mark's voice was steady. Good. Keep stalling. We'll be ready when you give the signal. That night, I decided to take it a step further. I needed undeniable proof. So while she showered, I slipped into her handbag, careful not to leave a trace. Inside, I found her phone bill, pages of late-night calls to Eric's number. My chest tightened, but I slipped it back quietly. That was all I needed. The next morning, she tried again. This time she brought a pen, placing it right in my hand. Please, honey, just sign these so I don't have to worry anymore. I looked up at her with tired eyes, playing the role she wanted. You've taken care of me so much already. If it makes you feel better, I'll sign tomorrow. Just give me one more day. She hesitated, clearly frustrated. But then she kissed my cheek and whispered, Okay, tomorrow. The moment she left, I dialed Mark again. Get everything ready. Tomorrow, I'll give her exactly what she wants, on my terms. I hung up, staring at the folder on the table. She thought she had me cornered, that I was too weak, too grateful, too blind. But the truth was, I had already moved my assets, already secured my future. What she didn't know was that by pushing me, she was stepping straight into my trap. And tomorrow, when she finally thought she had won, the curtain would rise on the act she never saw coming. The next morning, she woke me with breakfast in bed. Eggs, toast, orange juice, the works. She set the tray down with a big smile, the kind of smile people wear when they know victory is close. Today's the day, she said softly, sliding the folder back into my hands. The pen was already there, clipped to the first page. Once you sign these, I can finally relax. No more worrying about the future. I looked at her for a long moment. She mistook my silence for hesitation, leaning in to stroke my arm. Honey, it's just paperwork. You trust me, don't you? My chest tightened, but not from love. From rage. I nodded anyway. Of course. Let's get it done today. Her smile widened, relief flooding her face. Perfect. I'll call the notary this afternoon. We'll make it official. That was exactly what I wanted. Because what she didn't know was that Mark had already arranged for someone else to be there. Not just a notary, an investigator, ready to document every word and signature by evening. She was buzzing with excitement, pacing the living room like a kid waiting for Christmas. She had no idea Christmas was about to turn into a funeral. For her plans, not for me. When the doorbell rang, she rushed to answer it, ushering in the notary with a sugary, sweet greeting. I sat at the table, folder in front of me, pen ready. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. The notary sat up, shuffling papers. My wife hovered beside me, pointing to where I should sign, her hand almost trembling with anticipation. Right here, honey. Just your name. That's all it takes. I looked at her, then at the notary. Before I sign, can I ask one thing? Do these documents give her full control over everything I own if I die? The notary hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, that's what's outlined here. Her face froze for a split second, then she forced a laugh. Don't be silly, it's just protection. We don't want to think about worst-case scenarios. That's when I leaned back in my chair, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. Her late-night call echoed through the room. Her voice, cold and sharp. Don't worry, baby. It won't be long now. He's fragile, weaker every day. The notary's eyes widened. My wife's face drained of color. She spun toward me, her mouth opening, but no words came out that I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That's you, isn't it? Talking to Eric. Planning for my death while I was fighting for my life. The room went silent. She stammered, tried to laugh it off, but her hands shook. It's not what it sounds like. I slammed the folder shut. No, it's exactly what it sounds like. And every word of it is recorded. Every text, every email, every dollar you tried to hide. You wanted me gone? Congratulations. The only thing disappearing today is your future. Her eyes darted to the notary, who looked stunned, clearly uncomfortable. She tried to grab the folder, but I pulled it back and stood. My cane hit the floor with a sharp thud. I'm done playing your game. From now on, I make the rules. She froze, realizing her performance was over. The mask had finally cracked, and behind it was nothing but panic. The silence after I played that recording was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. My wife stood frozen, her lips trembling, eyes darting like a trapped animal. She tried to smile, tried to recover, but her voice cracked. It's not what you think. I was just worried about you. You misunderstood. I leaned on my cane, staring her down. Don't insult me. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about your payday. The notary cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe I should come back another time. Stay, I said firmly. You're going to witness this. Her face went pale. She shook her head, whispering, Please, don't do this. I opened the folder and pulled out the printed emails and bank transfers Mark had sent me. I slid them across the table. Explain these. Hotel bookings under your name. Money sent to Eric. Messages about how soon everything will be easier. Go ahead. Spin that for me. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The color drained from her face completely. For the first time, she had no script, no performance, no excuses. Just then, the doorbell rang again. She jumped, startled. I walked slowly to the door, cane tapping the floor, and opened it to find Mark and an investigator standing there. They walked in, calm but professional, placing a recorder and camera on the table. This is official now, Mark said flatly. Every word is documented. My wife's eyes widened in horror. You set me up. I laughed, cold and sharp. No, you set yourself up. I just gave you the rope, and you tied the knot. She lunged toward me, trying to grab the papers, but Mark stepped between us. The investigator calmly collected the documents, sealed them in an envelope, and tucked it away. Everything is secure, he said. And then, almost on cue, her phone buzzed. Eric. His name lit up the screen like a spotlight. I picked it up and answered before she could react. Hello. I said into the receiver. There was a pause, then a nervous laugh. Hey, beautiful. Did he finally sign? My wife gasped, covering her mouth. The investigator raised an eyebrow, recording every word. No, I said coldly. But thanks for confirming everything. The line went dead. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into a chair, face buried in her hands. Please don't ruin me, she whispered as I leaned in, my voice low but steady. You ruined yourself. You thought I was weak. You thought I wouldn't see through you. But you underestimated the one thing that survived that crash stronger than ever, me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sadness. Just a sharp, bitter satisfaction. For months, she thought she held the strings. But tonight, in front of witnesses, she lost them all. And as the investigator sealed away the last of the evidence, I knew this was it. The end of her game. The beginning of mine. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, lawyers, and endless meetings. But for the first time in months, I felt in control. My wife, or rather my soon-to-be ex-wife, was cornered. She couldn't touch my money, couldn't twist her way out of the evidence. Every message, every transfer, every word was laid out against her like a wall she could never climb. The divorce moved quickly once the truth came out. She tried begging, then threatening, then crying in the lawyer's office, but none of it worked. Eric disappeared from her life the second things got difficult, leaving her to face the wreckage alone. That was fitting. She'd chosen him over me, and in the end, he chose himself over her. That I walked away with my assets protected, my reputation intact, and the satisfaction of knowing she was left with nothing but her lies. The woman who thought she could profit from my death was now scrambling just to keep her own life together. But here's the part that really mattered. I wasn't broken anymore. The crash nearly killed me, but her betrayal had forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. Stronger, smarter, more focused. That I started a new chapter. Therapy, a new business venture, even reconnecting with people I'd pushed aside before all this chaos. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not just free from her, but free from the weight of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about that hospital room, about the folder she slid across the table, about the way she smiled like she had already won. And every time I remember how it felt to flip the script, how it felt to show her that she had underestimated the wrong, man.so here I am today, alive, thriving, and finally at peace. My story didn't end the way she wanted it to. It ended the way I needed it to. And if you've been listening this far, let me ask you something. Did I do the right thing? Was I justified in setting her up and exposing everything? What would you have done in my place? If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Hit that like button and drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.